The following is a live broadcast of a Lone Star community radio program, recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and facebook.com/irlonestar. For more information on this show, please visit our show page at irlonestar.com/shows. To sponsor or donate to this program, visit our donate page at irlonestar.com/donate, or email us at lscrstudios@gmail.com, or give us a call at 936-666-1084. Lone Star Community Radio production and broadcast is possible by folks like you. So sponsor and donate today.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Lone Star.
Hi, welcome to The Legal Connection. We have a show for the Conroe and Montgomery County residents, but we're also worldwide on Facebook and YouTube. You can find us at worldwide on irlonestar.com. And all you have to do is put in The Legal Connection Show. We air live on Tuesdays between noon and 1, and you can get us on the local FM channels at 104.5 and 106.1. My name is Tony Collins, and I host the show with my colleague Cheryl Johanny, but she is not in person here today because she traveled to New York to visit her new grandbaby, and she was quarantined. And so she's going to be on the phone today to give us the facts of what happened. And so what we're going to talk about is contact tracing and whether or not the government has a right to trace where you're at, and whether that's a violation of the Constitution. And it's kind of on both sides of the track depending on how they get it. And we've got her brother, Grant Bynum, has also started a group that's called Texas Against Contact Tracing. And we're just going to talk about that today. But first, we have Cheryl on the line, and she's going to tell us.
Tony.
Hi. We're going to. You need to tell our viewers, and our listeners what happened. How is it that you're being traced? What's going on?
Yeah. Well, about a week and a half ago, I went to New York to see my son and his grandbaby. We waited till the baby was about a month old because of all of this stuff. And when I came back, as I was about to get on the flight to return back to Texas to Houston, I got a text from United Airlines saying, by the way, if you're coming from New York, because United had all my information. I had my boarding pass on my phone and all that. Mm-hmm. I get this text from United saying, you're going to have to self-quarantine, mandatory self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
did they tell you what the basis for that was? Was it a federal order, a state order, a United Airlines order?
It was just a text from United Airlines, but it was Texas, because what happened was I got on the flight, and while we were on the flight, or as we were boarding even, they said, if Houston is your final stop, we need to give you this form to fill out. And so then I got on a plane, filled out the form, and it was asking for my driver's license number, my phone number, and telling me that I can't leave this designated location, which was my home location, for 2 weeks. And
so you were under house arrest per United Airlines.
When I read on it, mandate. Well, this is the kicker part. It's not, I've talked to different people, and they've said, just leave your phone at home. And I'm like, well, no, they have my driver's license number too. And if I get pulled over out on the street, I'm subject, or they've been calling me. A special agent from the Department of Public Safety has called me and just checked on, how I'm following.
They call your cell phone or your home phone?
They called the number that I gave them, which is my cell phone number. And so we just want to make sure that you're following these mandatory stay-at-home orders. And they could stop by the house to see if I'm here, if I'm not, or if I am out and driving and I get pulled over.
Is that law enforcement calling you?
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
For the DPS special agents. They're
Okay.
like sheriffs, because when I got off the plane, there were, I think there were about 3 of them standing there saying, okay, if Houston's your final destination, I need you to fill this paper out. And I said, no, I already filled it out. Here it is. And so he got my driver's license number, verified all of it, made sure it was correct. And then he's called me. But here's the kicker, that if I'm caught out on the street, or if the officer comes to my home and I'm not here, I'm subject to a $1,000 fine or 180 days in jail, or both.
And did they tell you what law that was that you would be violating that would subject you to that fine and punishment?
Tony, I read it. It seems like it was a special order, something like that, by the governor.
Okay. I guess we'll find out next week when you're here. You can bring it up and we'll do some research on it, because that sounds like a complete violation of your privacy rights. Okay, so you were saying that somebody called you at home. How often do they call?
I just got one phone call.
Okay.
And
When's
it
enough?
was, it was a local number. It was a 281 number, and it was this special agent. His voice sounded like the same guy that took my information when I got off the plane. So they created these special agents that actually do this follow-up. But, and then now we're subject to a $1,000 fine if I leave my home.
That's just insane.
And,
Okay. Did you have any symptoms of coronavirus?
No. And as a matter of fact, when I went to New York, it was like I was in full hazmat. I had a hairnet on. I had a mask on. I had one of those yellow gauzy things that they wear in the operating room. I had gloves on. I was not going to get this and take it to my son there in New York, who doesn't have it, or his wife or his baby. When I came back, I was wearing 2 masks and all this stuff. But still, I have to mandatory self-quarantine for 2 weeks.
So when is your quarantine over?
I'm assuming it's Saturday, because Saturday 2 weeks ago was when I flew into Houston. So it's been the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
And at first, I didn't think that much about it. I thought, yeah, whatever. But then I started really reading into what was actually going on. It's kind of like the problem with this whole corona thing. At first, everybody says, oh, I can handle 2 weeks. 2 weeks is okay. And then, 2 more weeks. Oh, well, that's not good. Oh, 2 more weeks. And, as this thing unfolds, it becomes just more shocking.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I think this is a violation of our constitutional rights.
Well,
And,
I think it is too, and that's what we're doing the show on, because what right does the government, even in the area of a pandemic, what right do they have to track you? And so, and I know that in the intro today, you probably know already, because I've been talking with you about what we're going to. Our show is on is the contact tracing, which is what they're doing to you. But they did contact tracing on you plus a penalty, and you didn't even do anything wrong. You visited your grandbaby. So and you don't have any symptoms. And so I guess my last question for you about all that is, did you ever go get tested, or did they require you to be tested?
No, they didn't. They did. I have been tested for it, but it's the more unreliable test. It's the blood test. It takes 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That was negative.
Okay.
But no, they didn't require me to be tested. They don't care about that. They just want me to stay in my house and not leave for 2 weeks.
Well, that kind of goes into the next thing that I'm going to talk about. And I don't know if you can stay on the line, because I guess you can co-host the show with me on the phone.
No.
Is that feasible, Dick? No. Station Manager Dick? Okay, can Cheryl stay on the line with me and co-host remotely? Perfect. All right, Cheryl, you're my co-host today remotely. This works out perfectly. All right, so I'm reading an article that I pulled today. So this is not my opinion. This is just information that I've pulled. But it was an article about from Dan Crenshaw, one of our state representatives, and he's saying that Democratic states want to keep residents under coronavirus lockdown orders while asking the rest of America to foot the bill. And he's a Texas Republican congressman, Dan Crenshaw, and this is what he was saying on Tuesday, and I guess that was today. It was probably about an hour ago. He went on to say that it was no secret that states like California and New York have vastly more vastly more expenditures and are in more debt than red states that balance their budgets like Texas and Florida. They have really massive pension programs, he noted. They're talking about California and New York. And this is on top of the fact that they actually tax their citizens to a huge extent. And it is also should be said that a lot of the coronavirus expenditures are in the form of Medicaid, which the federal government already pays for. And so this is a quote from him. So it's really hard for me from Texas to tell my taxpayers here that your federal tax dollars should go to other states, that in the case of California and New York, it wasn't, he's saying in California, it wasn't even hit that hard by coronavirus, but they want to bail out nonetheless, and that's because their state finances were so bad before all of this even happened. And he goes on to say that California, now this is different because you were in New York, but still, it's the same theory. California is one of the major economic engines of the country. The Golden State makes up around 14% of the U.S. economy. And according to Forbes, if California were its own nation, it would be the fifth largest economy in the world with a gross GDP. I want to say gross national product, but that's not what it is.
Gross domestic product.
Thank you. Gross domestic product of $2.9 trillion. California,
oh my gosh.
I know that's huge. California is one of the states earliest hit by the pandemic. This week, confirmed cases totaled 80,000 with 3,200 deaths. The situation in New York has been much more dire, with over 356,000 COVID cases and more than 28,000 deaths. New York is one of the richest cities New York City is one of the richest cities in the world, and although New York makes up just 1% of the total U.S. area, it produces 8% of the nation's gross domestic product. And then he goes on to say that, in addition, after Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for the end to blue state bailouts, New York Democrat Governor Andrew Cuomo claimed that his state sends more money to the federal government than it gets in return, and that Kentucky regularly gets bailed out by the rest of the country. According to a PolitiFact, a study by the Rockefeller Institute found that over 4 years, from 2015 to 2018, New York taxpayers paid more than $116 billion in federal funds. Okay, and that's a little bit off point for this, but the point is we've got New York and California running the show here for us, and dictating about our federal policies for coronavirus, when Texas has not been hit as hard as New York and California. And I do applaud Governor Abbott for for opening up the states, giving us our sports back since yesterday. He has a new order out it's giving us a little bit more autonomy than we had in the past. But at the same time, this is what our show is about today. It's about this contact tracing buildup. There was an article in the Houston Chronicle yesterday that kind of sets out kind of what this is all about, which I'm going to read some excerpts from it. And you had called me about Grant's involvement, Grant Bynum, your brother, who happens to be in Dallas right now, who is helping, who really just started a Facebook page with some of his friends to say he wanted to know about what this contact tracing was about. And he said since Sunday morning, he's had over 4,000 people join the page. And he calls it Texas Against Contact Tracing. And what started his concern was, I think, in part because you were stopped and you're now under house arrest, and because the state Governor Abbott has approved to pay MTX, a Dallas-based, or it's Frisco-based, but a Dallas area-based company, $295 million to trace us through contact tracing. And that's being funded through the federal relief program for coronavirus. But the problem is, when he went over, and he has a little YouTube on this that he must have just done it like yesterday. He goes to this MTX headquarters to see how big they are and what they're about.
The one in Frisco.
Yeah, it's the size of this radio station. Not to say this radio station's that small, but it's like 1,500 square feet. It's a small building. When he went there with his video camera, and he has on YouTube, if you want to go, just put Texas Against Contact Tracing just to look at it. It's
Tony, is that Texas Against Contact or Texas?
I wrote it. It may be Texans, but I have I have Texas, but either way, if you put MTX contact tracing, his YouTube video is gonna come up. It's like 7 minutes, but it basically shows that no one's even in this office. It is like there's
they're
no one
actually
there.
incorporated. They're incorporated in New York.
Right, but there
And,
should have been someone, at least somebody in this office. There's
Oh,
nobody
I
in the
know.
office.
I know. Well, my understanding is that they're setting up these little shell offices, so they have some sort of a presence, but they're not there, and they're really overseas.
In India. The guy that runs it, the president, he made it a Texas, he incorporated it in Texas, and it'll be in this article I'm getting ready to read some excerpts from, but it sounds like it's being run from India. So I need it, but here's what the article says, because Houston Chronicle, it's by Jay Root and Jerry Blackman. They've done much more investigative research than I have. And after I kind of hit on this article a little bit, I wanted to talk about surveillance and what the United States government allows under the Constitution, so people know what their actual rights are, and why Grant has got so many people behind him right now, because it looks like it may be not only unethical and unnecessary, but unconstitutional. Okay, so here is what the Houston Chronicle has to say. Texas health officials have awarded up to $295 million to a private technology company to quickly grow and manage a large fleet of contact tracers as the state braces up for up to 2 years without a coronavirus vaccine. The 27-month contract signed last week with MTX comes as more businesses begin to open, and the number of new daily COVID-19 cases in much of Texas continues to grow. Republican Governor Greg Abbott has said new outbreaks may be close contacts of those in, that's kind of weird the way it kind of skipped over. New outbreaks may be, and then it kind of skips, so I'm not really sure what the next thing says. Anyway, the next thing it says is close contacts of those infected, monitor them for symptoms, and provide them with instructions on testing and quarantine of isolation. Texas is now one of more than a dozen states to rely on contact tracing technology from MTX, an Albany-based firm that recently set up its second headquarters in Frisco. So it kind of connects you because you just went to New York, and now they've got this company in Dallas that Governor Abbott's contracted with for almost $300 million.
And it's a 2-year-old company. Does that say that anywhere? The company's 2 years old,
right,
and was awarded a $295 million contract.
Right, and that's what concerned me. They've just been awarded this contract of almost $300 million, and when you go look at their setup, there's no sign outside the building that even shows that they were present. They even have an office in the building, and when you go in, it's got glass doors, but no one's in it. It's just a bunch of cubicles with maybe 15 seats in it, and there's no one there. It's kind of crazy. So this you would think that maybe they've recently set up, but if they've recently gotten a $300 million contract, you'd think somebody would be there. Okay, now it says, but it will be among the first, if not the first, the first states for whom the company will also hire, they're talking about Texas, will hire, train, and manage thousands of tracers, according to Chris Van Dusen, a spokesman for the Department of State Health Services for Texas. Van Dusen said the agency plans for MTX to hire up to 1,000 tracers, I'm assuming that's people, in addition to the 2,000 state and local tracers already operating. Now, that's confusing to me because there's nobody in this office, so where are these tracers? Several hundred state health employees.
Well, the DPS guy that called me, he would be a tracer.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe he's hired through MTX, but they weren't. This contract was not entered until a few days ago, from my understanding. And so, who was he paid for when he was tracing you? Up to 2 weeks ago.
DPS.
Right.
He works for the DPS. So I think they started trying to do it this way, and they decided, let's just hire another company. Let's go with the company that all the other states have gone with.
I don't know, but
and
anyway,
we'll just get these MTX people.
So it says several hundred state health employees have volunteered to do tracing in lieu of their regular jobs. Kind of answers our question. Cities and counties are also in the process of hiring hundreds of tracers. Now, that's a little disconcerting to me because Harris County, Montgomery County are exceptionally large counties in the state of Texas, which means that they're going to be among the people that hire what are known as quote tracers.
Right.
MTX's primary role, of course, it does help our economy. MTX's primary role will be building and overseeing a virtual call center. The overall strength of their bid and their experience with call tracing in various states are what led us to choose them, Van Dusen said in an email. Now, my understanding is they're a pretty new company, and this.
Well, their attorney is licensed in New York, and he's been practicing for 4 years.
So he's a new attorney too.
Mm-hmm.
So their attorney's really new. He's been practicing in New York. Do you know if their attorney's licensed in Texas? Their general counsel?
No, I couldn't find any licensure in Texas.
Okay, so that is a little bit concerning to me too. He doesn't know Texas law, but he's just been awarded that company's been awarded $300 million to use by Texas. Okay, bidding documents obtained by Hearst newspaper say the contractor would oversee and provide support for, quote, a corps of epidemiologists, case investigators, and contact tracers. So this is much to what they're doing to you, but Texas isn't set up like New York to trace people like this. And what we're trying to get at in the show today is, do they have the legal right to do this with this company, with this money?
Right.
The deal appears to have been put together within just a few days.
It sure does, doesn't it?
Yeah. On Wednesday, that would be of last week, MTX hired Austin-based lobbyist Andrea and Dean McWilliams for up to $50,000 each, according to public disclosure documents. Others who submitted bids include contracting giants Accenture and Maximus. So they also do this, but they weren't given the bid. Representatives of the company said, and then, of course, I don't have my printout doesn't there, so we don't know what they said. But surprise, go read the Houston Chronicle. The company declined to comment on the deal. That means MTX declined to comment. CEO Das Noble has said it specializes in messaging applications and artificial intelligence to help government and agencies respond to emergencies. Vanguard Law magazine called MTX's group a $10 million company that has been self-funded to this point in a story it published in September. Well, now we know they're at least a $300 million company. The firm grew from 3 employees in 2015 to 200. Vanguard also reported the company was, quote, poised to go after $1 billion in revenue by 2025. The company reportedly first rolled out a disease monitoring and control application in early March in New York. Van Dusen said it is also managing contact tracers there, and that MTX's experience was a major draw for Texas, but they only started in 2015. They're not that experienced. It doesn't say anything about their medical experience. It just talks about their tracing, and it looks like they're just entrepreneurs that have pulled together to try to do a tracing project.
They're riding the wave, it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Van Dusen said MTX also has experience in Salesforce, which is a company name, the cloud-based software that powers the state's online tracing application called Texas Healthy Trace. So we'll have to look into that for the next show. The state also set up a call center late last month, but was using the community health hotline 211, which quickly became inundated. MTX will be in charge of building a more long-term solution, I guess with that $300 million. The agency aims to have the new call center up by next week. And this was written yesterday, this article. It will be staffed 12 hours per day, 7 days per week, according to a copy of the bid that was obtained by Hearst newspapers. The contract is being paid for with federal emergency relief dollars. And so that's how Governor Abbott was able to hire them. Now, here's another article on MTX. It says, and this is what I pulled about their company. MTX, this was written on March 2nd. MTX disease control and tracking application provided state government agencies, health officials, and airports with real-time insights in predicting at-risk communities, disease growth rates, and monitoring the rapid spreading of diseases, most recently with the coronavirus outbreak. The app also provides immediate clinical attention to individuals most affected and prevents the spread to at-risk communities. This says that...
So this is an app, Tony? This is an app?
That's what it says, and it looks to me like they're using phone data, but I believe this at least hits on what they are using. And I'm going to get into Carpenter versus the United States, which is a Supreme Court case that was decided in 2017 that basically says that...
When?
In 2017. I'm sorry,
Oh, okay.
it was decided June 22nd, 2018. It was argued in 2017. The Supreme Court determined that without a court order, you cannot use people's private data, and we're going to go into that case just a little bit, and about some the ways that the government but basically it is the government can use cell phone surveillance in the different ways they do it. But the way MTX on their own website says that they what data they use is this, and I guess we can fact check later. This says they are saying, quote, "We are very proud to partner with the state government agencies to respond to the urgent request to help monitor and control the coronavirus outbreak." And mind you, now they started 2015, so this is before there was any coronavirus outbreak. This system can be utilized for all epidemics across the nation to contain and limit the spread of the disease, said Das Noble, the CEO of MTX Group. So it looks like Das is the spokesperson and the CEO, if I'm correct from what we just read on this article. It said it was CEO.
That's his website, right?
Yeah. It says U.S. President Donald Trump signed a temporary executive order on January 31st, 2020, to restrict the entry into the U.S. from China, diverting all flights from the U.S. from China to 7 major airports across the country, including JFK in New York. In response to this executive order, so this has nothing to do with MTX. In response to this executive order, beginning on Sunday, February 2nd, the MTX Disease Control and Tracking app connected all incoming flight passengers into the system in order to adhere to the 14-day mandatory virtual quarantine process. And that was for people coming into the U.S., not people in the U.S. traveling domestically. Asymptomatic passengers had an easy-to-use system to report their symptoms and immediately connect them with local health services, organizations, and hospitals if they did, in fact, exhibit symptoms, which is different from you. You exhibited no symptoms, and you were domestic, okay?
Right, exactly.
And this is...
Tony, did that say asymptomatic?
Yes, it did not say like you. This said asymptomatic. So they should be...
So they're not exhibiting symptoms.
Okay, wait a minute. No, it said symptomatic. Let me read that again for you. Okay. Asymptomatic, that would be not exhibiting symptoms. I may have to correct myself here. Asymptomatic passengers had an easy-to-use system to report their symptoms and immediately connect with local healthcare services organizations and hospitals if they did in fact exhibit any symptoms. So it was supposed they were selling the deal saying, if you exhibit symptoms, here's who you can call. Not if you have no symptoms, we're going to track you whether you like it or not. Okay? That was how they're selling the deal. Okay. MTX is also expanding their application to provide local healthcare organizations similar capacities for treating patients with symptoms or people who are at risk with being in close contact with the coronavirus, which you would fall into if you were because New York, apparently they think everybody's got corona problems. It provides a centralized monitoring and control system that enables actionable insights to mobilize the necessary resources quickly while adhering to all required government data privacy and security laws. So they're saying, we're not going to breach your privacy, but we're going to be able to monitor you through other information. And in one way, they're saying, if you give this to us, anybody that's on these flights, but this is if I'm reading this correctly, it was the 14-day mandatory virtual quarantine process was for people coming into the United States, not for people that were in the United States. So
Right.
this is contrary to what you're telling me happened. They were monitoring you against your will, and you had no symptoms.
Right.
And they put you under house arrest.
Basically. Mm-hmm.
MTX values this. Now remember, this is the MTX website. Okay, so they're trying to sell it. MTX values personal data privacy and security, and would require consent of all individuals who enroll in the program. This is completely contrary to what happened to you. You didn't voluntarily enroll in the program. You left the
No.
plane, and they told you you're in this program.
No.
MTX will also host a webinar on recently developed MTX coronavirus control app data built on the Google Cloud. And this was on April 13, 2020. To learn more about it, you can go to their website, which is www.mtxb2b, the number 2.com. So we can see what they're saying and what they're doing, whether or not that's true. But based on what you've told me through your own experience, this is not true. So this is just
Well, see, I
propaganda.
think that was, well, so my experience and who's enforcing this is, they've got these special agents for the DPS, but the way I'm reading what you're saying is that DPS temporarily stepped in to enforce this mandatory self-quarantine 2 weeks. If you come from it, it's not just New York, it's California, I believe it's the city of Miami, Florida, it's Connecticut, it's several states that you come from. And so I'm thinking that MTX is going to
but
take
what you're
over.
telling me is that there was a 14-day mandatory quarantine. And if that was from President Trump, and I don't have that in front of me, then that would have been what they said in this article, the one we just read, was only from people coming from the United States in the United States. And so my question is, under what order is there a 14-day mandatory quarantine from these different states? I haven't seen that. And so that gives me some pause. And so I guess we can look that up and answer that question in our next show next week. Again, there may be overstepping their bounds if there's no mandatory 14-day quarantine from people going from New York to Texas. I haven't read anything where Governor Abbott's made a 14-day quarantine, and that's where, and because you're a citizen of the state of Texas, that's where it would come from. And so I need to look at that. I have not read anything in his orders saying if you come into our state from any of these specific places that we're going to quarantine you. So we need to look at that. MTX Group, Inc. is a global cloud technology partner that enables organizations to become a fit enterprise through digital transformation and strategy. This is, again, from their website. MTX is powered by the Maverick Artificial Intelligence Platform and has deep expertise in the public sector, providing proprietary designs and innovative concept accelerators. That just sounds like so much propaganda. I have no idea what that means. It doesn't mean anything other than they're using some, I'm going to paraphrase, they're not using your private data, but I don't know that that's the case based on what we know now. From media,
Well, they have my driver's license number and my phone number, and they're using that. I mean,
well, that's public.
private data.
That is public information to the extent that I can put your name into a public system and get your driver's license information. I can put your name into the
that's
white pages
true.
and get your phone number. So that's public information. But other information is not. Tracking you and knowing whether you've left your home or not is not public information. It's certainly your private
Right.
information. If you need to go out and take your dog to the vet because he's not feeling good, but you're not allowed to, and there's no emergency provision for that in our state orders, then that's definitely your private information. Of course, they would probably give you a break on something like that, but I don't know. If you're just going by the black letter law, it doesn't sound like they're using, is it just public information to track you? They go on to tell you that media inquiries can learn more about how the new digital transformation is assisting government health organizations to help spread contagious diseases. That doesn't make any sense. For media inquiries and to learn more about how this new digital transformation is assisting government health organizations to help spread contagious diseases, please reach out. That doesn't make any sense. It's saying they're helping spread it. And this is on their website. This is very concerning to me. That we're paying $300 million to a company with a website that says they're spreading contagious diseases. Maybe that's just a typo. View original content to download multimedia. And then it goes on to talk about MTX launches a coronavirus disease. Let me see which website. Oh, this website is actually www.biospace.com. So it wasn't their website, but it sounds like it's promoting them. Okay, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe their website doesn't say that, but certainly this article that was printed by the PR Newswire is saying that they're spreading the disease, which that's a little bit concerning. Okay, next article. Frisco Technology Company donates its disease monitoring app to all U.S. public schools. That's concerning. It sounds like it's a publicity stunt. Because public schools are closed right now. The Frisco-based MTX Group, Inc. is donating its newly launched disease monitoring control application to all public school districts in the United States. Several districts, including Frisco ISD, have extended spring break or transitioned to e-learning as a result of the coronavirus. And of course, that, likewise, I think we were discussing this earlier, has got its own set of concerns, because when you force people to go into an online environment when they chose to have an in-person education to have the interaction, the socialization, to learn better. Maybe they learn hands-on and not by,
and talking to other students.
Right. And if you are graded in a process where you're being forced into taking a class online that you had requested be an in-person class, and then to your detriment, you don't do as well in it, that in and of itself, this e-learning has got some issues that need to be looked into for people that may have not graduated with the high grade point average that they had expected due to the mandates that were put in place, and the state educational institutions that are now mandating how your classes are taught when that wasn't how you with your own through your own rights chose to take them. So that's an issue that we may bring up on a different program. Now, this says that co-founder Nipa Nobel, which obviously is a relative of Das Nobel, and Nipa spelled N-I-P-A, said the app, which has a value of $500,000, is designed for use by state government agencies, airports, and health officials. It was launched after the New York State Department of Health reached out in response to President Trump's issuing a temporary executive order in late January that prevented arrivals from China to 11 major airports around the country, including Dallas-Fort Worth. Trump has issued a 30-day travel ban from Europe, and that was just in a separate sentence. What concerns me about this article that is it was written by Dallas News, is that they're talking about this app being launched just after President Trump had requested a temporary executive order, but they've been in place for 4 years, and this is not something that they had done before. The Accenture and Maximus were other agencies that already were in place, yet Governor Abbott has now awarded a $300 million contract to a company that wasn't even based in Texas. They just established themselves in Frisco in an office that has nobody in it, and without the same technological background or vetting from what I'm reading as Accenture and Maximus. But I leave that. I think Governor Abbott's an amazing governor, so I will assume for the moment that it was vetted out, and that this very new company has got the technology to represent that they will wisely spend the $300 million of your money that's being spent to monitor you. The orders are an attempt to prevent the spread of COVID-19, which has become a pandemic, including a growing number of confirmed cases in North Texas. Only New York is using the app so far, but Noble, which is they don't say which one, is one of the co-founders of MTX, said the company is discussing its benefits with Dallas-Fort Worth Airport and other states, including California, Indiana, and Oklahoma. MTX is collaborating with New York State Department of Health in deploying a coronavirus monitoring messaging system that enabled New York State to not only monitor travelers, but also physicians and people that come in close contact with anyone with symptoms. Noble wrote via email. Users, so they're not even talking to these people in person. It's all via email. Do these people exist? Users who are arriving from affected global regions are asked to check in through a process called a digital quarantine, which will track the development of their symptoms. Now, this is different from you. You don't have symptoms. And, and they're not just digitally quarantining you, they're calling you. This is a little different.
And they can come out to my house too to make sure that I'm here.
And it's not
when
just
I read the rest of that order.
Right.
No,
it's not just a quarantine.
I'm looking for the order right now. No, it's not.
It's a mandate.
It's not a voluntary. Yeah.
This is criminal.
They
They
can come out to
basically
the house.
your rights are being your rights under the Constitution are being affected by what they're deeming a digital quarantine, and we know by your own experience it's not a digital quarantine.
Okay, Tony, but look, we've got just a few more minutes left. What constitutional rights of mine are being violated for our listeners? What are their constitutional rights that are being violated?
Carpenter versus the United States is the U.S. Supreme Court case, and it's a landmark case that was decided on June 22nd, 2018 by the United States Supreme Court concerning the privacy of historical cell phone location records. Now, this is a little bit different because it's only cell phone, but you told me that they got your cell phone number. They're using your cell phone to call you, and we know that they're using an application that they're saying it's through Google, but Google uses cell phone technology to trace people. We talked about that in our last show. So it's directly related. The court held in a 5-4 decision authored by Chief Justice Roberts that the government violates the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution by assessing historical records containing the physical locations of cell phones without a search warrant, which is what they're doing. Prior to Carpenter, government agencies could obtain cell phone location records by claiming the information was required as a part of an investigation. Which is good. But there's no investigation here. After Carpenter, government agencies after Carpenter in 2018, government agencies. Government entities must obtain a warrant in order to access this information. The decision overturned portions of 20th century legislation and case law when nearly all U.S. homes had land phone lines in favor of constitutional rights stemming from technological advances of cell phones in the early 21st century. The ruling was very narrow and did not otherwise change the third-party doctrine related to other business records that might incidentally reveal location information, nor overrule prior decisions concerning conventional surveillance techniques and tools such as security cameras. The court did not expand its ruling on other matters related to cell phones not presented in Carpenter, including real-time cell site location information or tower dumps, which is a download of information about all the devices that are connected to a particular cell site during a particular interval. The opinion did not consider other collection techniques involving foreign affairs or national security. Okay, and without getting more, because I know we're running out of time on this, what that amounts to is that MTX, if they're using the proper protocol, may be able to utilize cell phone dumps, Stingray devices, tower dumps, lawful interception by the government through court orders, where they've actually gotten a court order to bug or do surveillance. But just like what we heard with the Flynn issue that come up and with masking, there's only certain things you can do without a search warrant and without just cause. And what you're telling me happened to you and what is going on with MTX right now gives us great pause. And what Grant is doing with his Texas Against Contact Tracing, which they're having a rally in Dallas in front of the MTX headquarters, and it's a license one. They went through the government to be able to get the right to gather for this. On Tuesday, he's just bringing it to their attention. And again, we don't really have enough information right now, but we should have it by the next show to know whether or not there is a constitutional violation that's occurring with what happened to you at the airport and with what Governor Abbott giving $300 million to this particular company that's only been in having a presence in Texas for what appears to be a few weeks, and to go forward with that. Okay, so I'm being given the signal by Station Manager Dick that we need to wind up our show for the day. We will be here again next Tuesday at noon at irlonestar.com, on World Wide Web. You can find us. You can listen to our show on Facebook and on YouTube. Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you again next week.
And we want to remind you
to serve God by serving others. Thanks,
okay,
Cheryl.
Thanks for listening, guys. Love you, Tony.
Bye.
Today's show was recorded and broadcasted live on irlonestar.com, Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and all rights and ownership are reserved to Lone Star Community Radio. For more information regarding this program and Lone Star Community Radio, visit us online at irlonestar.com. Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station, serving the community with local programming on TV, radio, and online. If you enjoyed today's program, please support us by sponsorship or starting your own show. Contact us today by phone or text at 936-666-1084 or email the station at lscrstudios@gmail.com.